Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Shot. And guess what? He is back in the country, the southern tip of Africa. Byron is back. That's why he looks so good in high definition, because his internet works much better here than it does on Mud Island. So, Byron, hello, and welcome back to the country. Are you happy to be back? That's the first question, I suppose.
How can I say no when every individual I talk to and I say, I came home, and they all go, welcome back to the shithole. And you just think to yourself, like,
Byron,
okay,
come on. You had to wait
why did I
3
come back?
seconds. Now the video's going to be demonetized. You can't swear in the first 30 seconds, and you did it at 28. Anyway, speaking of shitholes, News 24 had a summit. This was called On the Record Summit. What a crap name. Anyway, they spoke to a lot of interesting people that no one cares about. But what is really annoying to me is, and I'll quote Adria Basson, the editor, he says he was really inspired by the depth of human talent in this country we know as South Africa. And the depth of the human capital is also quite vast. So therefore, he left his summit enthused, emboldened that the country can be fixed, and inspired that we have fantastic leaders in important positions. Now, of course, he's talking about this Chief Justice, he's talking about the CEO of Eskom. Before I start losing my stuff, Byron, what do you make of a comment such as that, when someone is enthused because there are like good people around?
I think that there's no one in the country is in dispute that there's a lot of skill in the country. When it came through to News 24, the viewers, that we did do a video on this, which is entitled, Would You Go Pay 1,500 Rand to go watch a News 24 conference? And we concluded, like, no, we wouldn't. We also did another video, which is one of our best reported videos this year, which was entitled Return of the Whiteys, where we basically talked about how there was a certain demographic in the country that could specifically fix Eskom, because obviously it had the skill and it had been around long enough to know how to fix Eskom. No one in the country is in dispute that the country has a lot of skill. Everybody knows that there's a lot of skill in the country, and they know that there's very skilled individuals. The problem is who that skill is. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, that skill doesn't lack the right amounts of melanin. They quite often are male. That's quite a bad thing. Sometimes they're Christian, which gives you this trifecta. They're pale, male, and Christian. Like, that's not for us. No, so because they kind of hit this trifecta, they're automatically excluded from the country. No one disputes that the skill exists. It's just not usable. And why is it not usable, Ramon?
Well, because of ANC policy. But what's annoying, like, let's go through who he talks about, right? So he's talking about Andrea Johnson, who's the head of the investigating directorate at the MPA, right? And he says, she just arrested Brian Molefe and other key people in state capture. Her enthusiasm is palpable. Anyway, who else did he talk about? Justice Minister Ronald Lamola, who is driving through to make sure that the MPA has a lot of resources, and, he's a smart, straight-shooting politician who wants to do the right thing.
Before you go on, I have to always remind people of this, and we cannot forget, Ronald Lamola is part of the WEF's Young Leaders Program, so let's just not forget. This is a WEF stooge.
But even worse.
Anyway, carry on.
Even worse, he's part of the very party mafia that is destroying the country. Like, how can you say someone is smart and straight shooting if the organization he is part of is destroying the very fabric of what South Africa is? As for Andrea Johnson arresting Brian Molefe, okay, great. Where are the guilty verdicts? 0. I can arrest anyone. Anyone can be arrested for anything, right? You have to prove it in court, but that's not happening, right? Because there's postponements and lack of evidence and other bullshit. Ronald Lamola, head of the ANC, part of the ANC, really not a guy that you should support whatsoever. These are the people that give Adrian Basson hope. Someone else who gives him hope is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Busi Mavuso, who's a national treasure. That's his words, not mine. Is this the same Busi Mavuso who loved the vaccine mandates and the lockdowns and any other bullshit that came from the lockdowns during the course of COVID-19? Is this the same one, right? I think it is the same one.
Yeah, that's the same one.
It's weird for the CEO of business leadership to show leadership by closing down businesses for close to 2 years. But I suppose for Adrian Basson, that's called leadership, right?
Yeah. And let's not also forget that part of her leadership council, which is part of Cyril's whatever, he seems to take some stock in these people, is also one of the directors of Aspen, who coincidentally was also for pro-vaccine mandates in the country. I couldn't figure out why. I mean, I think Aspen makes vaccines, but that's unconnected. That's
fake news. They used to make vaccines. They opened a whole big vaccine thing somewhere. I can't remember.
And produced none because they got no orders.
Exactly. So these are the type of people that Adrian Basson thinks can really fix the country. Here's the fundamental problem with this. I hate to call it analysis because it's not. It doesn't matter who's good in the country. It matters who has the power to do something in a country. Because believe me, my friends, there's lots of good people in Zimbabwe. There's a million good people in Venezuela. They don't have the power to change anything. Not the Chief Justice, not a High Court judge, not the business leadership CEO, whatever. What have they accomplished in their time as being good people? Somewhere between zero and fuck all is my consideration. Byron, maybe you're a bit more charitable than I am.
No, I tend to agree. And I mean, just look again, I'm not even going to reference which videos we've done on this topic because they're just countless, but how many times have we referenced even the paralysis going on at Eskom? And the primary reason for the paralysis that's going on at Eskom is around the fact that we know who I'm referring to, it's the Rater, he is restricted in terms of what he's allowed to do due to ANC ideology, it's due to ANC policy. So don't really matter how good a CEO he is. I mean, he's got lots of ideas, but he is constrained to the policy framework in which he works in. And that policy framework remains controlled by the ANC, which is part of the reason why last week I also went off on a rant about all these journalists who want to talk about, look how we can fix South Africa. And these are all the problems with the economy. And it's all this, and this. But nobody seems to want to tackle what the real issue is. And the real issue is ANC ideology.
Yeah.
Until you fix the ANC ideology, don't matter how skilled the country is, don't matter how much money there is, don't matter how many businesses there is, don't matter how much goodwill you have, until you fix the political parties, until you fix the political remit, nothing changes. And we can all say we've got hope that there's skill here, but there's no hope until the policy changes. The policy has to change.
No, of course, and they're not going to change it, right? They are within that system. Raymond Zondo is within that system of policy. So is Andre de Ruyter. So is Andrea Johnson from IED. And he goes on to say, like, in terms of politicians, like Mpho Phalatse, the mayor of Joburg, at the time of recording, she probably isn't anymore. Bongani Baloyi, who moved to Action SA. Lindiwe Mazibuko, Lindiwe Mazibuko, she was like Helen's best friend at the DA, then she left. And every single time the journalist wants someone to talk to in a political sense, they speak to her. That woman has achieved nothing in her life, with absolute respect to her, but she has done nothing, right? She wanted to bring in BEE in the DA. That's why they told her to go jump. Why is she a leader? And most importantly, if you talk about political leadership, why don't you invite Helen Zille to your little panel? Because that is the only political leader who actually has anything as called a track record in South Africa, like by far the best politician.
But she'd break the spell. Helen is also the only person that, if you invited onto that panel, that would say, "Yeah, there's an elephant in the room, and it's ANC policy." So Helen would say that because she's not stupid. She knows what the problems in the country is.
Exactly.
So obviously that wouldn't fit in with the agenda, would it? Because then she'd make obvious what the real issue is, and nobody really wants to talk about the issue. It's much better to say, if only we had more capital, if only we had more businesses, if only we had more skilled leaders. Like, it's easy to use all these buzzwords that make it seem like it's capital's problem. But what they don't seem to realize is that the problem isn't capital. It's not that of human capital. It's not that of the labor. It's not that of business. The problem is the state. The problem is government. And until we change state and government, man, who cares? Like, who cares how good capital is? It's
No,
just not gonna make
exactly. And capital's not good, by the way. I'm very distrustful of capital in South Africa for the most part. For the most part. But fundamentally, you can't have a conference that looks at the future, bring on a few mediocre people with respect to most of them, except for some. The only person of any regard is the gift of the givers leader who was there, who really understands the country, who actually does work,
Yeah.
has skin in the game, has saved millions and millions of lives and created like boreholes and whatever, charitable aid. He's the only one that actually understood anything. But the rest of them,
Yeah.
the country, the problem with this, Byron, and I'm trying to lose my words now, is that pieces like this give you a sense of hope. And hope is very dangerous in Africa. Extremely dangerous, because hope assumes that the good people will do something in the future sometime, and then South Africa will just like be fixed. That's not how the life works at all. Not in Africa, not anywhere. As we saw with Donald Trump. Just bring him in, everything will be fixed. Not a chance. It's much deeper than that. And for Adrian Basson and for News 24 and for Business Leadership South Africa to say like there's hope on the horizon, there's good people, it doesn't matter one bit. If the good people have no power, and half of them aren't good, by the way, but if the good people don't have any power to change anything, you're wasting your time dreaming about hope. The solution is, as we say, localize everything to yourself as much as possible. That's the solution.
The problem that I feel, I agree with everything you've said. I'd take it one step further and say the problem with pieces like this and why it gets me annoyed, and also why I did my hit piece last week, was because what the government does and what these people attempt to do is to say that the ills of the state aren't actually the state's faults. It's because it's your fault. You didn't get yourself skilled enough. It's your fault, business, because you held on to your money. It's your fault, the private enterprise owner, because you kept everything for yourself. It's your fault because you didn't share. Like, it's always our fault. And it's like they'll say, everything could just be so much better if businesses hired more freely, if they just hired more black people, if they just hired more women, if you just upskill people more, if you just spent more time to skill, everything would be great. But the problem is not us. The problem is the state. The problem is the government. The problem is the ANC. And what the ANC and the government get to do is they get to say, see, this is why we want to get more involved in your life. This is why we want to implement the affirmative action, the BEE policies that we want to do. We're doing it because you can't be trusted to do it. We know you've got the skills. We know you can do it. That's why they want to take control of the NHR, and they want to tell doctors where they can work and where they can't, because they're like, we know you've got the skill, but we can't trust you to do it because you won't work where you need it, and you won't do it because you're selfish. So we need to get involved because you won't give us hope because you won't do what you're told. So we have to tell you what to do so that things can be done. That's why it annoys me. It annoys me because they're constantly looking to people that have no power to be the solution. But then they're going to moan at us when things get broken. And all the while, the problem never was and currently is not us. It's the government.
Exactly.
It's the government stealing the money. It's the government implementing bad policy. It's the government just being shit.
And absolutely everything. And if you want a summit for the future, all you have to do is go up there, create a summit, go on stage and say, anyone who votes for the ANC is the enemy of the state, and we will deport you to Madagascar. That will solve the problem. And that person who says that, okay, well, wherever, we'll send them wherever we want to. And the people who actually say that at that summit will actually be true leaders for tomorrow, because they actually have a solution 100%. To the problem. They really do. Correct. Unlike these other guys who are part of the same corrupt system that we find ourselves in the first place. But anyway, that's my rant. Any last words from you, Byron?
Yeah, I think if the only guy that actually was worthwhile paying to see there was the guy from The Gift of the Givers. Because if you ever listen to that guy talk, that guy gets it. That guy says to you, if you want to have hope, get rid of the state. Do it yourself. Don't even think the state's even worthwhile even thinking about. He gets it, man. He gets it. But he's the only one, in my opinion, that did.
Yeah. Yeah, fully agree with you. We actually need to. I did send an email. I need to resend it and ask them if you can come for an interview. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. A key message, really. Don't rely on hope. Don't rely on good guys. Don't rely on anything. Rely on yourself. Rely on your family. Rely on your neighborhood. And most importantly, rely on the institutions that don't hate you, of which there are very few. But thanks for watching. Cheers.
Absolutely. Cheers.